Well, I'm pleased to introduce Varjabedian. He's an award-winning photographer who explores the back roads of the American West, making pictures of the unique and quintessential. He shares awe-inspiring stories of the land and the people who live on it, one photograph at a time. Craig's photographs of the American West illuminate his profound connection with the region and its people. His finely detailed images shine with an authenticity that reveals the ties between identity, place, and the act of perceiving. For Varjabedian, photography is a receptive process driven by openness to the revelation each subject offers, rather than the desire to manipulate form or to catalog detail. He achieves this vision by capturing and suspending on film those decisive moments in which the elements and the spirit of a moment come together. Craig has he's got a couple of, we'll have a couple of links for Craig. He has some amazing photographs of the people of the West. But tonight he's here to talk um, about White Sands National Park, um, the second newest national park in the United States. So, Craig, I'll let you go.
Well, thanks a whole lot. Hi, everybody. I'm so delighted to be here. We're talking where I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Um, and if you've never been here, I hope that you will definitely put it on your bucket list because it's an absolutely incredible place. I came from the East. Um, Before I lived here, I was living in New York, and my wife and I decided that it was time to leave the Big Apple, and we decided to come here. Um, it was a momentous decision for me because I believe that I found myself photographically. I founded what it was that I believe I should be taking pictures of. And that notion has really kind of grown as time has passed. I left New York 35 years ago. So it's been a little while. And I love going back to New York, don't get me wrong. But I think that this change has been a wonderfully good thing for me. Um, so let's see. Let me show some pictures here. So I thought I'd start here just because it's kind of a fun picture in a way. My dad took this photograph back in around 1965. Um, the reason I like it is that I think it's kind of funny. It brings back really powerful memories of um, uh, that that Diana plastic camera that I have around my neck. But it also, for me, speaks about the fact that photography, that luck plays a very important role in photography. And if you'll notice around the toggle on my coat, you'll notice that there is my lucky rabbit's foot that my grandfather got me. Um, and I've never forgotten this notion that as much as I know all my technique and I know how to focus the camera and I get myself to the right place, that there is a part of this whole thing that I really have no control over whatsoever, and it is luck. Um, and sometimes, the luck muse is shining brightly on me, and sometimes it's not, and that's just the way it goes. Um, Here I am today. I grew up, as you can see. That picture was taken a few years ago. The image actually is a PR piece for my newest work, which I'm going to talk about a little bit towards the end of this talk. Um, a lot of people want to know when I start these things, what kind of camera do I use, And I guess I want to say that, it really doesn't matter in the scheme of things. You almost have to work really, really, really hard to find a digital camera that is the worst. And in varying degrees, they get better, certainly. But for the most part, uh, uh, photography is about the person making the photograph, not about the gear. But I get asked every time, and I used to get frustrated over talking about gear, but I've decided to sort of embrace the idea of telling people what it is I use to take pictures. This is a Nikon D850, by the way. I've been a Nikon shooter since the 1970s, and I've used other cameras. The I come out of a film background, and I've come out of using a view camera that has a variety of lenses to it, each of them having very distinct personalities. When you go to 35 millimeter, or you go to a DSLR, or even a mirrorless camera today, trying to find those different personalities is really a challenge. And I've photographed similar scenes using 4 or 5 different models, with the 4 or 5 different models of cameras, using roughly the same focal lengths of lenses, and I can still see the difference in what a Nikon camera does to my photographs, or does for my photographs. And so I haven't felt the desire to particularly change. Um, so anyway, um, again, I shouldn't say again, but I made this illustration in part because a very nice Native American woman beaded the shoulder pad on my camera strap. So I always thought it was really pretty, and so there you go. Um, a little bit more about gear. I'm really a big believer in keeping it simple, and so all of the work that I'm going to show you was made with Nikon cameras, starting with the D810. The tripod, very simple, lightweight carbon fiber tripod, and that backpack, which is a Gura gear, which I use because I really like the zen of it. It just has a quality about it that I can't quite describe. Um, I get frustrated using gear and packs and things like that, like particularly packs where I can't find what I'm looking for easily. The great thing about the Gura is that's just a very simple thing for me to use, and I really like it. So what you're looking at in this photograph was taken at White Sands. It was taken at sunset, and it pretty much shows you the gear that I was carrying for most of the work that you're going to see. The only thing you cannot see in here is that there are 2 other lenses that are in the bag. One is the 7200, and the other is the 14 to 24. And I'll talk a little bit more about those as we go along. And if any questions, come up, just, send them on into us. As a photographer, I also really believe in printing. I think that it is not a terribly good thing for photographers to have their images only existing kind of digitally, either on like Instagram or Facebook, or, on a website or whatever. That I think that if there's something about having a physical print that, is almost a kind of Kilroy was here sort of thing, where, you have it on your wall, and it exists physically. And so um, um, several people will say, real photographers print, and there's probably some truth to that statement. But I don't want to make it exclusive, in that, there are plenty of people out there that can make prints for you. And one of my favorite is Bay Photo in California, but I know throughout the country there are great, companies that will print. But I encourage you highly to think about making prints of your work, and putting them up in the world that you live in. It's a very important thing. And as a matter of fact, this is something that I really stress and encourage my mentoring students. I mentor 6 people a year, and I'm after them all the time to printing their work, because I just think it's an incredibly important thing. I also exhibit. I just thought I'd sort of throw this one in. It's just one of many museum exhibitions that I've had. This one happens to be at the Albuquerque Museum here in New Mexico. It's for a body of work on Ghost Ranch, which was that place you may have heard of that where George O'Keeffe lived. It's owned by the Presbyterian Church, but I spent 5 years or so photographing there, and you can actually see my camera in the middle of that photograph. And I also write. I also publish. For a long time, I published through the University of New Mexico Press, again in Albuquerque. This book that you're looking at here is my latest, The Light of Days Gone By, and it's a retrospective piece in a way. It is, I like to say, it's like 45 years in the making, because that's about as long as I've been picking up a camera and making pictures. I like publishing. And one of the great things that's going on now, of course, is that, you don't have to take your work to a publisher anymore to create a book. That there are companies like, for example, Blurb, that will go ahead and print up a copy, and you can print, one or as many as you like, and they'll even help you sell them if you want to, or you can just print them and give them away to your friends and family. So I highly encourage you to take a look at that. And the great thing too about publishing is that it's a great way of marking time. So, I kind of wish this technology had existed back when I started, because I probably would have done one every year or two, which is what some of my students are actually doing, where they'll have like their 2020 photographs and now their 2019 photographs, each in a book, and they send them to me and they send them to their friends. And again, it's just a great way of marking their images, showing the images that they made during a given year. So here we go. Another lovely little illustration, sort of trying to show, the book and the camera, and the bird that was hopping up the left-hand side, and of course the person that walked through just before I made this photograph. Before I go, all of my pictures, not many of my pictures, I should say, are on the web. If you don't have a website, it's another thing I encourage my mentoring students to do. CraigVarjabedian.com is mine. If you want to, go look at them later, please feel free to do that. This is sort of like my my virtual store, my virtual place where people can come and see me and see my work. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about white sands. As Terry said, it is one of the newest national parks in the country. Originally, White Sands was founded as a national monument and was made a national monument by Herbert Hoover in 1934. And this is sort of a cool picture, which is why I'm showing it to you. It was taken with I don't know if you all know what a circuit camera is or not, but if you take a look down here, you can see the shadow of the cameraman. But basically, the way that the camera worked was that there was a piece of film this long, and it had almost like a clock escapement inside of it. And what it did was that the camera actually rotated, and as it rotated, it exposed a small piece of the film, and the camera would pan depending on how far that you set it for. And so it started over here at the left where that that man is sitting here, and then the camera started panning and it recorded all this stuff right back to this woman who is sitting on the sand dunes here. But this is opening day, 1934. It had to have been just an incredibly joyous time for them to have this. But I love this picture because I've blown it up on my computer and I've looked at all the faces on there, and I just think it's an amazing, amazing thing. So White Sands is located, gives you a little map so you can sort of see where it is. It's located in the southern part of New Mexico. You can see the the dotted area, and this is where White Sands is. Okay, and we can go a little bit further here, and you can sort of see a little bit more, and you can kind of see in this picture, where there are other national parks. And I like to show this image because, and there's actually more national parks than are showing on this picture. The picture is from the 1930s as well. And so this shows you what was going on in the 1930s. Since then, we have at least two new national parks in our state. Before I forget, also one thing that is interesting to kind of note is that there's a same and a difference between a national park and a national monument. While they're sort of physically the same and they're administered the same, as I understand it, national monuments tend to receive less of the the federal benefit than national parks do. So in terms of the designation, national monuments were designated by presidents. So in the case of White Sands, it was Herbert Hoover. National parks were created by acts of Congress. So that's kind of basically the difference between them. So this is White Sands, and I like to show these maps just to give you a sense of where you are. Okay, now this map shows you a couple of things. Okay, number one, it kind of shows you the area that is sort of known as the monument, the national park, which is basically this side of that cooperative boundary line. And everything that's over here and everything that goes back over here quite some distance belongs to White Sands missile range. So typically, if you were to go there and you like to hike, you could hike out this far, but there is a fence that comes along here and some pretty menacing signs that say, don't go any further kind of thing. But within, and so what you see from this picture is the dune field. So you see all the way from Lake Lucero all the way up, really up to here. Although you can see bits of it kind of keep going, okay? And you see the San Andres Mountains, which you'll see in my photographs in just a minute, okay? And so most of the pictures that you're going to see, 2/3 of the pictures you're going to see, were taken in this area here. And the other half, which I'm going to start off by showing you, is from the missile range. And that would be on the other side of that line. And this shows you, pictures of missiles and test planes and so on that were created over its time. Today, the missile range goes ahead and it tests not only for, it'll test missiles and things like that, not only for the United States, but also they do work for Japan and other friendly countries. This picture is really very, very important because what you're looking at here is the very place where the United States got into the space race. And so what you're looking at is a gantry that was built for the V2 project that Wernher von Braun brought with him when he came over with the Allies at the end of World War II. So I know when I walked on this, I felt like I was kind of walking on hollowed ground. Over in the missile range also, the space shuttle actually landed here only one time. This is the runway out on the lake bed, and the shuttle Columbia landed here and was then taken. It was sent here first of all because of bad weather at Andrews Air Force Base, or at the, and I can't think of it right now, at the Air Force Base over in California. But what they do is they landed it, and then they also landed a great big 747, and then this thing, the shuttle was put on the back of the 747, and it was flown home essentially. After the government spent all this money creating this this runway. They only ever used it one time, in part because the shuttle was so dirty from all the sand that it took them months to clean it. And I can only imagine what an incredible job that what a terrible job that would have been to do. And so that's why this was only used one time. Also over on the missile range is it's a varied landscape, and this is one of my favorite places to photograph. These are actually Apache petroglyph, painted petroglyphs. So it gives you an idea, and what's so great about all this area is that it's virtually untouched, because since it's behind, government gates and guards and everything else, other people haven't gotten to this thing and done something to it. So these places are all pristine. Another thing that happened on the missile range was this. In 1945, the government launched the first detonated the first atomic bomb called Fat Man, and it was also at the missile range. And what you see here is what's called the Trinity site, and right there, where that obelisk is the bottom of where that bomb would have hit the ground. If you look around, you can't see them in the photographs terribly well, but if you look around, you can actually find the pylons for the tower that would have held the thing. So here we go. We're at White Sands. What a gorgeous place, huh? I mean, it's just absolutely. It just takes my breath away every time I go here, because I've never really seen anything like it. And I originally went there. I was on a grant from the NEA to do some other work, and I happened to stop by there because I saw it on my map, and I got out of the car and it was like, oh my God, look at this place. And I didn't want to leave, even though I was on a pretty tight schedule and I had to keep going. But every time have felt, and will feel a little bit, kind of lost, a little bit confused in my mind. This is the place I go, just to kind of find myself. My wife often says that I go here to find my smile, and I think that she is right. I think that I come back from here feeling a lot better. I feel healed in a way. And anyway, this is White Sands. It's roughly 275 square miles of this white gypsum sand that has, if you were to look at it on a reflectance scale, it probably is reflecting something like 90 to 95% of the light that hits it. So, certainly being out there with sunglasses and all that kind of stuff is a good thing, okay? But the thing that's really interesting is that this is not sand, what you're looking at here. This is actually gypsum, the same stuff that goes into plaster of Paris and gets put on walls and homes and other things like that. And it actually starts as selenite, these selenite crystals, which are about as brittle as your fingernail. And what happens is that water and wind break this stuff down, and then the wind starts moving it across the dunes. And as this stuff kind of rolls, what happens is that it breaks down. And so by the time that you see it, what I just showed you in the photograph, that picture was taken somewhere over in here, right? Well, those crystals had moved all of this way till you finally got over into the, sort of the heart of the dunes, if you will, where they're just tiny, tiny little pieces that are reflecting enormous amounts of light. And so I show this because this is the very first picture I ever took at White Sands. For those of you who are interested, it was taken with film. It was taken with a view camera, and the print is made in a wet darkroom. So the light's magical. I think it's a really important thing to sort of see. one of the reasons why our photography workshops, I teach photography workshops through a company called Eloquent Light Photography Workshops. Um, our White Sands workshop fills, almost every year. It fills consistently, and this picture really kind of speaks to it. It is just so magical here that there's this amazing confluence of land and sky and light that just all come together. And people seldom leave here, if they work at it, they seldom leave here disappointed. So what you're seeing here is the moon setting at sunrise. And that mountain that you see in the middle, along the back of the photograph, is the San Andres Mountains that you saw in that map. So the sky, many, many nights, fails to disappoint. And this is just one of many examples of images I made of the sky, because I was so enthralled with all the color that it gave. And what's also so beautiful too is that you see that you've got almost this monochromatic foreground, this monochromatic landscape that then has this amazing color that appears above it. You just, in terms of showing color, it would be hard to replace this. So White Sands is a place a lot of people, a fair number of people go, I guess, and everybody sort of finds their own little bit of their own bliss there. You'll see people out flying kites. One of the biggest things that people like to do there, and I'll show you that in a minute, is they love to slide down the dunes. So what they'll do is, I would imagine in Wisconsin you have these these saucers, these big plastic saucers that you can slide down a snowy hill. People use those same ones all year long to go sliding down these dunes. I was very lucky to have made this picture. It's actually what was going on, which you won't know unless I told you, is that these are actually actors appearing in an ad for a Samsung 360-degree camera. And I was just standing on a distant hill, and I saw them come running down the hill. At White Sands also is a building that was built by the WPA, Works Progress Administration. A beautiful, beautiful building that I highly recommend to people that when they're at White Sands, they should definitely stop and see. One thing that you can kind of see here is that in the old days, this is how people went into the park. They went in right through this portico. And so the ranger was at this window right here, and he would take or she would take your money and give you, a sticker of some kind, and then you drove the rest of the way back into the monument. During that time, they also made these incredible picnic tables, which to me looked like UFOs sitting there. But they're really incredibly practical because they provide shade most of the time when during a hot, summer afternoon. You'll notice too that there are places where people can barbecue, and I just happened to be there on a day, the following day after it had poured rain, and that's why you see this kind of this reflection in the bottom of the frame. So for a minute, let me talk to you about the white sand dunes. Here they are. I've never tired of photographing them, and in fact, I'm looking forward to getting back there in September after things kind of calm down with the current pandemic. But I find that one of the great things about this place is that it's not the kind of place where you sort of want to run to every single thing that's there. It's best kind of taken contemplatively, where you move, calmly and quietly and everything else, to sort of see it, and sort of leave yourself open to the place telling you where its beauty is in a way. And so that's kind of the way I've always approached this, and I approach my own work actually that way. And so anyway, that's how this picture was found. Just as a little bit more technical note, I typically shoot in RAW. I don't normally shoot in JPEGs unless I'm shooting pictures of an event my daughter's at, the raw file allows me a lot more flexibility in terms of processing. Also, many of these pictures, in fact, most of these pictures are HDR photographs where multiple exposures were shot so that I captured, all of the shadows and all of the highlights, and then use software to sort of build the image back the way I saw it. And here you see a dune that is actually, you can see it actually moving. The dune's not actually moving, I'm sorry. The dune is in the process of moving, but not very fast at the moment. But over a year, a dune can move up to 40 feet. So what you're seeing is the direction that this dune is moving. So you can see the foot of it over here, and you can kind of see how that sand is just coming up here and it's kind of moving down, and it will continue to move kind of northeast. A lot of vegetation there. So what you're seeing is you're seeing rosemary, you're seeing these things, which are yuccas, and you can kind of see some yuccas from the previous year, and you can actually over here see a new yucca growth. And of course, you can see what the wind has done. It's created these marvelous patterns in the sand. I have a student who thought that this picture looked like the eyelashes of the dunes, and I sort of like that. I think that that's a pretty great way to sort of see this photograph, even though it's rice grass. It's still, I just think that I'd like to imagine that the dunes herself, or is underneath all of this. So then we have the sky, amazing. This happens to be an image made, a few moments after sunrise. Sunrise is sort of funny down at White Sands. Sometimes you just get incredible color like this, and sometimes you just don't. I think I have, after photographing down there for for a period of 7 years pretty consistently, I found that I didn't have a lot of luck capturing much color in the mornings, but every once in a while, what you see, this kind of thing kind of happens. So I think that there is kind of this orchestration that takes place, and in my mind, I kind of see that the monument is almost orchestrating the sky, or maybe it's the other way around. I mean, it's all how you choose to see it, but these two pedestals that you're seeing here, which are caused by the dune moving past this area where this sumac had kind of put down roots. And what you're seeing that's left here is being held in there pretty much by continuous moisture, and of course the roots of the sumac. Eventually, I would guess that this dune right here, is going to come along and cover this all up again. So I'm absolutely fascinated by this relationship, by the way, between the clouds and the sky. And so I photographed it enormously. I was surprised when I had to call a halt to the photography and kind of going through everything, how many pictures I made of the sky. I mean, not that I didn't not photograph the dunes, but I have a lot of photographs of the sky interacting with the place. I think it's just incredibly important. And here we go. We're coming now towards the end of the day, and here you can kind of see another example of, the show, if you will, that the place puts on. It's absolutely breathtaking. So you're looking at a night photograph here. Terry was asking me the other day when we did an equipment check. She was asking if this was a dark sky area, and I told her no, that it really wasn't, because what you're seeing this way, looking this way, which is kind of looking south, is you're seeing the lights of Las Cruces and El Paso over here, um, and kind of actually all the way along the horizon. And so, it does challenge the photographer. I made one other photograph that I included in the book, actually, and I decided to leave all of the color there because I really felt like it was important to show people kind of what they might experience when they're there, and that's what they would experience. So all that yellow that you're seeing, the yellow on the left is coming from, and I didn't talk about this before, but it's coming from the Holloman Air Force Base when they turn on the runway lights. They're sodium yellow, and they just pollute the sky. As a little FYI, this little line right you see right here is actually a drone that they fly. That's another one over here, and that's another one over here. And they fly these drones all over the world, all commanded from Alamogordo. And what you're seeing here, by the way, is the top of a pedestal. So the yuccas, I think, are a really important thing to take note of because they're just everywhere. And if you go there in the spring, you get to see them bloom, and it's an amazing thing to see. So what you're looking at here is this is probably 10 days. It's probably almost 5 feet tall, and it's probably only 10 days old. In other words, the bloom this is what happened in a week. And so the blooms come up, and then they eventually flower. And when they do, they have a sweet, sweet smell that it's just a wonderful thing to be out walking, around this place, hiking around here and seeing these beautiful, white, yellow, green flowers that don't look like they should be in this rather dry landscape. The other thing that's also blooming is sand verbena. And what I've always been astonished by is how these smell like lilies. Remarkable, really. And of course, this is rice grass. I sort of saw this when I photographed it as almost like a Zen painting, just a bunch of scrawls on a field of white. But I get lost in studying this. I'm kind of getting lost now as I look at it and try to talk about it. But I love the lines. I love the shapes that are created, and I like the shapes that are created in between where the grass intersects, like right there, for example, and back over here, and there's a whole bunch of others. Anyway, so there you go. You can sort of see, a really beautiful patch of yucca. There you go. And then eventually they fall off, they dry out and fall off. And this is kind of what you're seeing here. You're seeing, older pods that have fallen off of this plant. But you're also seeing blossoms that have fallen and broken. And then you've got the darkling beetles. There's one right here that is looking for moisture, and it's going ahead and taking it from the blooms that have fallen. There's another one right here, by the way. And so the yuccas are here all the time. In other words, after the blooms have done their thing, they will send out seed pods, or I should say seeds. The pods will break open and seeds will come out, and they will grow up in other places. Here, what you're actually seeing is you're seeing a dune that in time will overtake this whole thing. In other words, all of this sand is eventually going to go ahead and cover this all up because the sand moves at roughly 30 to 40 feet a year. And if you take a look over here, you can kind of see how the dune has already taken this plant away. Whoops. And then finally, after time, they will break off, as you see here. But even as they return to the sand, I think they're still incredibly beautiful. And this is the tree that you actually see in that night photograph that has the leaves on it. This was taken later in the year with after the um, the leaves had fallen off. This is a cottonwood tree, by the way, and there's a line of them that stretch from the mountains all the way almost to Alamogordo, so almost across the entire monument. And people believe the scientists believe that there's an underground river there, and that's where these trees are getting their water. This was taken right after, just before sunset, I should say. So White Sands is a place for animals and people, and that's another one of the great things about this place is that animals have always been there. What you're looking at here is a photograph of a footprint of a mastodon. So you can imagine how old this is. Um, and what you're actually looking at is not necessarily the footprint per se. What you're looking at is this represents the print or the place I should say where the animal walked, and it compressed the sand, and then over time water and wind has kind of carved out the area where the animal didn't step, and so what's left basically is his in a sense is his footprint. You also have the Mogollon people that were trading in that area, Native American people that made long travels across the sands to get water to trade with other Native Americans. And what you're seeing here actually is a real pottery shard, Mogollon pottery shard. And then what you're seeing is a bowl, a recreated bowl, if you will. So you get a sense of what it would have looked like in its time. Out there under the sand dunes are these things called metates, and what they are is a place where these Native Americans would have gone ahead and put down corn and would have ground it. This metate actually looks like it was just left here like moments before, even though what you're actually seeing is an uncovered metate. So at one point this was covered with sand, and then the sand moved on, and this was the way this was left. So this is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old. So one of the best things to do at White Sands, I have to admit, is to slide down the dunes. And I actually borrowed one of these saucers from the hotel I was staying at, and I too went sliding down the dunes. But I don't think I looked as cool as these little kids did doing it. So I decided to photograph people, relating, actually, touching and working with the dunes. And these two kids were just absolutely fabulous. I mean, the smiles on their faces, speak powerfully about, the attraction this place has. And so, as I was saying about animals, people can bring their dogs to White Sands and can walk them everywhere. As long as they're on a lead, you can walk anywhere you want, as long as they're with an adult, if you will. By the way, that was my kid. You have to forgive me. I thought I should show you a picture in part because while she was in college, she was with me on a lot of these trips, helping carry gear and just cheering her old man up when the weather would get in the way. Um, anyway, this is her. Um, I also, like I said, I teach photography workshops down there, and this happens to be just a part of a group I had down there. Um, the pictures they made were absolutely stunning of what you're seeing here. And there's a fellow who lives, oh, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes from the monument, from the park, I should say, who has camels. And what he does is he takes them for a walk once a week out on the dunes, and it's wonderful to catch him out there. Um, and of course, people go horseback riding. I saw horses all the time when I was out there. Um, I have to confess that this picture actually was staged a little bit in that I hired the two people to bring their horses to White Sands. They were friends, and I hired them to bring their horses to White Sands and ride. And I photographed them. And this picture speaks powerfully about how important it is to remember that it ain't over till it's over. Um, I had made another photograph and I turned and walked away, and then all of a sudden, within moments, that sky lit up the way that you see it, that bright orange. And thank God they were just happened to be sitting there talking, and even their dog over here, the dog's name is Velcro. He just was in exactly the right position. And what you're seeing here is quickly handheld, but it came out, I think, perfectly. And it was better than the picture that I tried to set up. So here they are. I got to find another way to get my kid in this thing. So I like to call White Sands a place with a capital P because it's that important to me, and I think it's important to others too. Um, I love the fact that, that what can you say about a place where, you actually could go ahead and to some extent, do a little graffiti as in the case of these people that, carve this heart into the sand. Because the beautiful thing about this is that within 24 hours, maybe 48 hours, the sand would have come ahead and just literally covered it. And if you take a look back over here, you can really see the sand moving. See it? And so remember I told you that it's the sky and the land, and this is a really good example of, the sun slowly sinking into the west, as they used to say in the old cowboy movies. Um, this is I think it's incredibly beautiful, and I never get bored of sitting down and watching this happen. I only ever made one of this. I tried, I can't tell you how many times over the 7 years I was down there trying to photograph, make another image of the skyline with these rays of light, being broken up the way that they are. I never got it again. Love this picture. It's one of my absolute favorite. It's a shot that I made, a picture I had made as I was leaving the park. I happened to turn around and I saw this, what you're seeing right here, unfold. And I ended up later looking at I knew that let me back up. I knew that I was celebrating my birthday down at White Sands. And I happened to take a look at the time that in the metadata when when I had made this picture, and it was made at the moment that my birth was recorded. So I absolutely love the notion of that. And then I looked a little bit further and found out that this was the view that my father would have seen when he left the hospital that night. And so amazing color at White Sands. The other thing that's also pretty incredible is that, even if you were to mark with a GPS where you were standing, if you were to take a picture on Monday and go back on Tuesday, it would not be the same. The sand could have moved, the light would be different. I mean, it would be almost totally different experience. So nearby, I mentioned that there is the Holloman Air Force Base. And so there is this flying military presence that goes on over there. And what you're seeing is the contrail from one of the jets. flying overhead. And I thought about at one point about just waiting till it flew out of the scene, you know, but there was something about that white streak that I really liked. And so there you go. And so I always sort of like to end my talk, if you will, with just, you know, this is so often the question that people will ask me when I've done this talk live is, well, okay, you did all this great work. Now, what are you doing now? You know, and so I added here with Terry's permission some examples of my current work. I mostly, for most of my career, other than the commercial work that I did where I photographed automobiles, um, I mostly photographed nature. I mostly photographed those things that we all love to see and the beautiful light that lights them, you know. And I stood really far away from people because, you know, the landscape tends to look back oftentimes much more quieter than people do. And I was, other than the commercial pictures I had made up till the point I began this, of you know, CEOs and other people, and I never did weddings, by the way. Um, um, I really never photographed people for myself. One day I was out photographing for a workshop. Actually, I was photographing a Native American friend of mine, and something miraculous happened. And I don't. It's one of those things that, you know, I was not definitely not in control of beyond, you know, setting the camera exposures correctly and framing the thing up. But what was going on in the pictures just absolutely astounded me. And so I started making more of them. And so I started photographing Native Americans. And what I want to say about these pictures, which is really important, is that the photographs are collaborative. So what that means is that unlike a commercial photograph where, let's say, I would say, okay, I want to photograph a Native American, I want you to wear this, that, and the other. What I tell people, what I'm trying to do is create a portrait of them. I ask them to bring the things that are important to them. And so they bring them. And what you see in these pictures, in this various regalia, are things that, as a Native American, are important to them. Allow me to step back on and talk about this picture just ever so briefly. One thing that has influenced a lot of the pictures I've made are the photographs by Edward Curtis, who was a photographer of Native American people back turn of the last century. And one of my favorite photographs was a photograph that he titled Bear's Belly. And it was a picture of a Native American man that had an incredibly interesting altercation with two bears. And the bears, I guess, kind of lost in the altercation. But he, in the photograph, he photographs the man wrapped in the um, the coat of the bear. And I remember seeing this photograph in when I was in college. And so when I set off to make this picture, I decided that I should try and make my own. This is sort of my homage to Edward. And I just happened to meet someone who had a bear, uh, um, and I knew the right person to photograph it with. And what you see is what I did. And also, I love the kids. I think the kids are amazing. This is their future, you know. And a lot of people are spending time teaching, you know, their children the old ways, you know, their history, so that they don't forget it. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time listening to me here. It's been a fun way to spend the end of my day. Um, Please allow me to do kind of one egregious commercial. I spoke to Terry and I said I'd be delighted to, you know, offer to, you know, allow you folks to buy books, and I would make a contribution to the club. But she said no, that was just not in the cards. And so what we did was that my assistant came up with this idea where, you know, if you're interested in buying either my White Sands book or any other book that I have up there, if you type in Club 15, you will get 15% off. You'll get it autographed and shipped to you. So there you go.
Well, Craig, thank you so much. I
Sure.
do have a couple of comments. Um,
Okay, let me switch back so you can see my face. How's that? See if I can do this here. Stop sharing. There we go. How's that? Can you see my face now?
yep.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, hit me.
First of all, I want to thank Jay Olson Goody, a member of the club, who told me we needed to have you as a speaker.
Well, I hope I didn't let you down.
And Jay has said that he did a workshop with you in Santa Fe
Yeah.
in 2009, and he says it remains the best workshop I've ever attended.
Oh,
I
Jay's the
highly
best.
recommend Craig as both a photographer and a teacher.
Well, he's very kind. If you're out there, Jay, thanks.
And then there was a question about the yucca. How are they pollinated? Are there bees?
How are the yucca pollinated? That's a really good question, and I don't know that I have a good answer for it. Um, I never saw. I mean, I hardly ever saw bees out there, like bumblebees. I mean, on occasion I did. I suspect that the beetles are probably, you know, carrying that pollen with them when they crawl all over these plants looking for water.
Okay, another comment was who said when you're shooting landscapes, you're shooting the weather?
Who said that?
Dennis. Oh no,
Are you asking
Richard
me
did.
who said it?
Richard.
I'm not sure
Richard
the question
Hudson.
here.
I don't know who said it, but it seems so striking in your great pictures of the clouds over the sands, and you obviously went enough time to get gorgeous skies.
I think it was actually John Sarkovsky who said it about Ansel Adams photographs. Sarkovsky was the director of the museum, you know, the photography curator at the Museum of Modern Art, and he talked about how Ansel's photographs were more about the weather when he was comparing kind of Ansel and, say, Edward Weston, a contemporary of his. Um, but I think that your point is really well taken. That those two things have to happen together, you know, for a successful landscape photograph to happen.
Okay, I had a question myself. When you were showing the mastodon prints,
Yeah.
how big was that?
The print itself is probably 18 inches from, you know, sort of on the long dimension, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, okay, I had a couple of other just comments.
Okay.
Wow, beautiful and powerful images. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, whoever said that.
Jill did.
Someone
Uh,
asked a question. Let's see if I can open this up here and find out what it says. Oh, here we go. Let's see here. Did you organize your? Someone asked about how I organize my workshops. Typically, they are organized around the day and night. In other words, we try to get participants to be at the specific the good places, if you will, at sunrise and at sunset, and even throughout the day.
Okay, another word of thanks for a great presentation, stunning
Thank you.
photos, and I especially loved your Native American photos.
Oh, whoever said that, thank you.
So
I really appreciate it. That's my new work. That's my new work.
and I will be
Yeah.
sending out links to a couple of websites of Craig's.
Okay.
Do you do night photography workshops too?
Yes, we do. Typically not workshops totally focused around night photography, but like when we're at White Sands, we definitely plan a night or two out late at night. One of the things you have to kind of understand a little bit about White Sands is that unlike other national parks, you can't just kind of go in there and go out of there when you feel like it. The park opens at 8 and it closes about an hour after sunset. But we've been able to sort of create a situation with the park where we can stay out longer, basically. We have to pay them for it, of course, but that way we can go ahead and we can stay out there till 10 or 11 o'clock at night, so that the let's say the Milky Way is in the position where we want it to be. That photograph that you see the Milky Way in of the pedestal actually was taken close to midnight. The
How many
workshops, by
days
the way,
are
I
in
see
your
there's a message
workshops?
here. I'm sorry,
How
Terry, go
many
ahead.
days are in your workshops?
Oh, usually they're 5 days.
Well, I think we've covered the questions that
Great.
people had and the comments.
Well, thank you,
I know I
everybody.
plan on attending one of your workshops next year,
You're the best.
and I can hardly wait to actually meet you in person now.
Well, we'll share some enchiladas.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, listen, thanks everybody for coming and joining. I really appreciate it.